Some people are stuck and they don't even take the time to realize they're stuck, and they get burnout and they wonder why life is falling apart and they're getting sick. I graduated number one in my class. So we had 185 students start, all hardcore. Only 19 of us finished, and I was number one. And I attributed almost all of that to my meditation. Right? We're human doers instead of human beings. And so if now you can outsource or delegate 90% of what you used to have to do every day to an AI agent, then it allows time for you to finally stop what you're doing for at least a half an hour every morning, right? Win in your mind before you step foot into that battle.
Welcome back to Super Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Shahid Durrani. Today we have with us Mark Divine, founder of Unbeatable Leader Within. His mission is to awaken courage, presence, and purpose in leaders. Welcome to our show, Mark.
Hey, it's great to be here, Shahid. Thanks so much for having me.
No, my
nice
pleasure.
To meet you as well.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. I know we're chit-chatting earlier. So I like to kind of start off. It's a recent pivot, but it's something that we've been experiencing from audience, and their feedback is like, because people want to hear experts and they want to hear about them. But because of all the noise online, they want to invest their time more accurately. So one of the questions that comes up to finding out the revenues of your life, like what are you generating, and how consistent is it? If you're comfortable, could you give us a ballpark on that?
It has definitely been changing over the last several years. I'll have to tell you that. Up prior to like 2021, a large chunk of our revenue was coming from events, live events that we'd run through my company, Seal Fit, which is, forging mental toughness using crucible, hard, type training experiences. And also, through high-end programs where we put people into small groups we call boat crews, which is also a nod to the Navy SEALs training, right? I was a Navy SEAL commander. And so I draw from that experience quite a bit. And so we were coaching boat crews and doing all these live events. COVID really damaged that business quite a bit, right? The live event business. And I also personally decided to move away from those hardcore, challenging type experiences, not because, they were extraordinarily effective at transformation. But what we found is, I think largely for the very same reason you said that people want to talk about, real things. People are so distracted. And so there's fewer and fewer people who are willing to subject themselves to really hard things. And so we found, we used to run these 50-hour nonstop physical, mental, emotional training events we call Kokoro, which means to merge your heart and mind into your actions. And they're powerful events. We run like 65 of them. They're modeled after the Navy SEALs' infamous Hell Week. No sleep, nonstop training for 50 hours. And, in 2017, we would get 75, 80 people showing up at these events. And by the time 2022, 23 rolled around, we would be hard pressed to get 15 people to show up. We didn't do anything different, right? So we sunset the events, and we also sunset the coaching model because it became very hard to manage and scale, right? Anytime you have coaches between you and the client, or, someone standing between you and the actual client, then it becomes challenging to manage both sides of that equation, and you have to really be thoughtful about who your customer really is. And in our case, we believe that our customer was with the end client, and so did the coaches. And so we had a lot of coaches who would basically, say, well, this client is my client. And then they would go off and take the client with them. And so we found a high degree of churn there. So that business model went away. I'm moving more toward corporate work, right? Working with organizations. So I believe there's a lot of leverage there, right? Because you have one client, and you could, for instance, I'm working with a multi-billion-dollar consulting company named Slalom. They've got a big presence up in Canada as well. And to do leadership development for their executive teams and then their mid-level managers can have a huge impact on an organization, and even trickle out to their clientele. And that's important to me, or meaningful to me, because the nature of the leadership, the development that I do is one where we really are seeking transformation in consciousness in the way individuals and teams or even organizations really interact with the world around them. And I think this is absolutely necessary in the age of AI. Mm-hmm. The AI is going to take care of all the tactical stuff that you used to do as a manager or a leader. And so you're left with really the raw human capabilities, which haven't really been trained and developed. And so, so what I'm really passionate about is training things like intuition and creativity and spontaneous knowingness, right? Like we call that direct perception, insight. And these things can only be trained through, what used to be predominantly Eastern practices of meditation, contemplation, insight work, visualization. And that's a hallmark of what I've been teaching, starting with the Navy SEALs since 2006. So we've got a real bench strength and depth in teaching those skills. And so now my revenue is coming primarily from organizational work and corporate training, both coaching and events.
So are you able to share a rough ballpark what that looks like?
In terms of what? Revenue figures?
The revenues, like are they...
we're not a big company. We've always hovered around 5 million. I'm shooting to scale that. Like I said, the last few years, whenever you pivot, sometimes you have to retrench in order to move forward.
Of course.
So we've retrenched a bit. I've had to, do the 80-20 Pareto analysis and decide what programs, even if they're making money, are just sucking too much energy. Yeah. And the margin's too low. So we've been pruning and cutting and I'm looking forward to scaling up to 10 million by 2027, 28.
Wonderful.
And then seeing where to go from there.
So
the other thing on that note, there was a time where I had a fantasy of making an impact through transformational training and coaching, like I've described, which really is a high touch, right? It requires a lot of care and feeding. And so every time I've tried to scale it, and I had this fantasy that I could grow, a larger organization and maybe have an exit, like a lot of entrepreneurs dream about.
Yeah.
So the entrepreneur in me thought, well, maybe I could be able to scale this thing to $50, $100 million and exit. And every time I tried to do that, then we lost the high touch part.
Yeah.
Everything got a little bit flatter.
Hand-holding. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've kind of given up on that and said, it doesn't matter whether you transform one person, 10 people, or 100 people. The size of the business isn't that relevant to me anymore as I get older. I'm not really concerned about the revenue as long as I can fulfill my mission and serve the people I'm supposed to serve, with authenticity. And sometimes when you scale, you lose that authenticity.
No, definitely, Mark. What you're saying about this time we're in right now with AI, I feel like it's a blessing. How AI came into our life. Obviously there's people and different opinions, in which I respect. I love everyone's voice. But in my point of view, AI is here to amplify our creativity, to allow us to be more present, be more calm in the moment, really fuse in to the reality that we're experiencing, and being grateful, just feeling into the moment, whatever is bringing up and down. And to achieve that, to kind of remove all the noise or the stuff that's keeping us busy and the repetitive stuff, AI is going to take care of a lot of that, and what it leaves is the human being to be experience more stillness, to come up with more effective, efficient ideas for the world. I'm really excited to see the ideas that are going to be coming out from people now that they, relieve themselves from the day-to-day, the grinding and the hustle aspect. Right. What is going to unleash in this world? That is what, hopefully I'm alive to experience it, but it's already happening, It's already happening. No, I agree with you 100%. And I agree with your very positive view. I mean, there's a lot of negative perspectives around AI, a lot of fear. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense because it's new. We fear the unknown. Yeah.
But just like any tech, right, there's positive and negative sides, and it will be used for negative things. But I love where you're going on the positive side. I mean, we're up until now, or up until the last year or so, human beings are just buried in tasks, right? We're task saturated.
Robotic.
We're human doers instead of human beings.
Yeah.
And so if now you can outsource or delegate 90% of what you used to have to do every day to an AI agent, then it allows time for you to finally be. And then the question, we have to teach people, this is where I come and you come in, we have to teach people how to be now. Yeah. Like this stuff we should have learned.
Or remember, because as you know, as kids, we were being all the time.
Yeah. Right. How to be creative. Remember that
imagination.
It's okay to be alone and sit in stillness. You don't have to be scrolling social media all the time. My favorite thing is to go into nature and just sit.
Yeah, me too.
Just sit. Not try to do anything, but just sit and enjoy. And you watch nature come alive around you, right? I remember once taking a walk up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I was just really calm and peaceful. And I came upon a family of deer. And I was so calm and present. They just smiled. I imagined that they smiled at me. They didn't really smile, but they weren't bothered by me. And I was really within 5 feet of this family, and they were just munching on their leaves, and I was hanging out with them. And it was a beautiful moment. And then I heard another couple kind of traipsing down the trail coming toward us, and they were jabbering away, and the deer all at the same time perked their heads up and then bolted.
Yeah.
Within, like, they were not even close. They were still like 2 to 3 minutes from us. And I thought about how different the experience is when you can be quiet and still and enjoy communing with nature, whether it's animal or trees, compared to people who have to incessantly jabber or incessantly distract themselves. So they have to unlearn that behavior.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's a habit, another habit, right? We pick up in our school systems that we need to feel safe. We need to overthink to be, in a good place. We need to do more. But, a thought came to mind I want to ask you about is, before the success, because at the end of the day, we're trying to help the audience with this episode, right? So before the success came, can you share how your life looked like when it comes to money, mentally, emotionally, and what you were doing before the success? Can you share that time?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I've had a very interesting kind of journey. I was brought up in a really small town in upstate New York, about 400 people. So that's pretty small. And I would say that my family is probably not uncommon, but it wasn't pretty, right? A lot of alcoholism, both sides of my family. Dad was a rager. He was actually kind of mean, but I love him to death. But at any rate, so that had an effect on me, my psyche, as a young kid. And part of the benefit of that was I did find solace in nature and also in endurance sports, because I got to be alone, and I was a competitive swimmer, a runner, triathlete. I used to just love running the trails. That background gave me the opportunity to get recruited for swimming at a pretty good school called Colgate University. Because of that experience and meeting some other people who were far more mature emotionally than I was, and also confident, going and getting these great jobs in New York. And I was thinking, I'm going to go back to the family business in upstate New York. And instead of doing that, I applied for a company that's now PricewaterhouseCoopers, Coopers & Lybrand, working for Coopers & Lybrand and getting my MBA at the Stern School of Business. So I became an MBA CPA. Now that was the first kind of formative career that I had. So I find myself in Manhattan, in a job that I didn't really understand, and nor did I really like it. But I continued my training. I really loved running and endurance sports. So I would run every morning, and I would go to the gym at lunch. And I conceived myself as a lifetime athlete, like someone who I had an early kind of yogic epiphany that the body will stay fit and healthy as long as you train it daily, right? And you take care of it daily. And so that was the beginning of lifelong love with fitness and health. without ever thinking I would get into a career in that, and leadership development even. What really was a turning point for me is I took up meditation when I was 21 years old, and that was through a martial art. And my grandmaster happened to be also a Zen master, and so I started doing Zen sessions with them and going to the Zen Mountain Monastery for these long 4 or 5 day retreats. And that had such a transformative effect on my mind and my emotions. I literally had a complete transformation to where I could see that the conditioning of my body, mind, the way I grew up was not who I really was, and it wasn't who I needed to be. And so I learned to ask better questions. I learned how to contemplate, how to journal, and how to do inquiry or insight meditation. And soon it was revealed to me that I was living this lie and that I was really meant to be a warrior. And I kept getting this sense, and I'm a warrior, I'm a warrior, I'm a warrior. And I'm like, if I'm a warrior, why am I working as a CPA? And so, and then it was revealed, this is where synchronicity comes in, because I was getting closer and closer to my truth. My truth said I'm meant to be a warrior. I started asking, well, how is that supposed to look? What type of warrior am I supposed to be? And that's when the Navy SEALs, U.S. Navy SEALs, were revealed to me. Literally just accidentally walking by a recruiting depot, Navy recruiting depot, and seeing a poster about the Navy SEALs. And I was like, whoa, that is how I'm supposed to be a warrior. So in 1989, after 4 years in Manhattan, I got my MBA from Stern School of Business. I got my certified public accountancy thing all finally wrapped up. Passing that exam was awful. Anyways, I got my first degree black belt in karate, one of now like 4 I have. And I left it all behind because I had gotten into the Navy SEALs through, as an officer, through Officer Candidate School. And I went through Navy SEAL training in 1990. Graduated number 1 in my class. So we had 185 students start, all hardcore. Only 19 of us finished, and I was number 1. And I attributed almost all of that to my meditation, right? And my ability to maintain focus under pressure, arousal control, attention control, the ability to concentrate on the right task at the right time, to break things down into micro tasks, to not get overwhelmed. And literally one of the most important skills I learned from my teacher, Nakamura, was you only have today. He called it one day, one lifetime. Today is your day. Yesterday, it's a memory. Tomorrow's a hope. But today is real. And so for all entrepreneurs out there, today is your day to make things happen, right? You don't wait for tomorrow, right? And don't live in regret or coulda, shoulda, woulda based upon what happened yesterday or even in yesterday's victory. Today is your day. So with that attitude, literally, SEAL training and the rest of my life became all about what's today look like? How can I make today like awesome? You know, what if today is the last day of my life? This is the Warrior's Creed. It could be. I have like 20 some odd friends who are no longer on this planet from the SEAL teams. And I think about them a lot. And I'm thinking, well, you know, that could be me. In fact, I'll tell you this, Shahid, I was up in your neck of the woods. I was in Quebec last February. It was 1 year ago today that I had major surgery for a snowmobile accident in Quebec, where I slammed into a tree off my sled. I was going about 40 miles an hour, and I got run off the trail by some Canadian guy I didn't even know, didn't even stop. And I was surprised to open my eyes. And I was actually filled with joy and gratitude that I was given the second chance, because I didn't think I was going to make it when I was heading toward that tree. And so it just reinforced this idea in me that, man, every day is precious. This whole life is precious. It's an opportunity that someday you're going to look back and say, wow, I wish I had taken it a little bit more seriously in terms of being the kind of person that I now know I can be, or that I dream that I can be. And that kind of person is like the opposite of what culture and our academic world and even our family wants us to be. So we have to, in a sense, turn our back on almost everything that we've been learned and taught to believe is true, and then seek our own truth. And that truth can only be found deep, deep inside. And like we talked about a moment ago, that requires stillness. So I found that stillness on the meditation bench. It led me to the SEALs. Contrary to what most people think, SEALs are an insanely high risk. We do some incredible things, but we used to laugh and say, you know, the job was like 23 hours and 30 minutes of absolute abject boredom, interrupted by 30 minutes of sheer terror. So we had a lot of time alone. And so I was able to really deepen my practice in the SEALs. And after I got off active duty and out of the SEALs, I wanted to kind of return the favor. And I think this is so important for entrepreneurs is when you choose a mission, make sure that it has a big element of service in it, right? Like you're doing something, you're giving back all the goodness that you were given and all the lessons and insights that were given to you by your mentors and guides and teammates and your parents even, but give it back to the world. Don't just go out to make money, right? Or to try to look impressive or to put points on the board or to see how, compare yourself to other entrepreneurs. None of that matters in the long run, right? None of that's going to matter. You're on your deathbed or in your last 6 months, you're not going to look back and be like, I'm really glad that I was a billionaire or worth X amount of money or had this many exits or built this kind of bit. None of that matters.
No,
right? None of that
matters. My mom passed away recently on a couple of weeks ago, approximately.
Sorry to hear
and,
that.
I would be with her she was in the hospital about 4 months. I was there almost every weekend, mostly. Saturday, Sunday was my shift. The weekdays my sister would do. And we would just be with her. And I would be with her and she was sleeping a lot, right? But I'm just fast forward to the last moments and I was just watching her eyes blink and watching her breathe, her stomach coming up and down. And then, I missed the part where the last breath happened, but it occurred while I went out and I came back and she passed away. So I was thinking what she would give for this moment right now.
Right.
To have just this moment right now to be, even with us or just be in this moment, just to experience life for just this one more moment. She would give anything for it.
Right.
That motivates me. That excites me to be more present in the moment, to appreciate what I have, to be more grateful, to allow the ups and downs to just flow by and not get caught up with anything,
Right.
And I was telling my kids the same thing, if they argue over something silly and I say, why are you going to argue on this? Why do you have to, it's natural, obviously, but take a moment. Your grandma would have given anything for this moment, right? And it makes you wonder, it makes you think. It's a very deep realization. I feel death has been, death is part of us for us, the ones that are alive, to realize how precious life is. That's the reason why death is there, I think.
100%. Yeah, the Eastern practices that I alluded to, they've been described as really just training for death in a positive sense, right? What that means is like you're always prepared, and at a spiritual level, you recognize that you're so much more than the body. The body is enlivened by source, by spirit, and that source, spirit, soul, whatever you want to call it, is beyond the body, but uses the body as a temporary vehicle. So the death moment is like, it's like taking off your body is like taking off an old jacket and just putting it away because you don't need it anymore. And it can be very peaceful and very beautiful, and there's nothing to fear about it at all. That attitude can bring tremendous release and all the fear, like the primordial fear that human beings have is fear of loss of the body, right? All that fear can go away when you meditate and contemplate in the way that we're talking about. I heard, and this also speaks to the importance of disciplined health, right? I heard a Zen monk the other day saying, every day you've got hundreds of problems and you focus on all those problems. But if your body is sick or injured, you only have one problem. That's it. So flip that and take care of your body. And if you're taking care of your body, then you got to take care of your mind, because the mind has to focus on the health and discipline yourself to get to the gym and do the training and to eat well and to sleep well. So your body, mind, and those are not two separate things, but one experience. The body, mind will stay healthy every day, so it never becomes that one problem. And also that practice, that discipline brings humility, right? And acceptance and all these qualities that we're talking about. And so just the discipline of taking care of your body so that you can live this one day, one lifetime attitude is a spiritual practice in itself, and will and will lead to those qualities that we talked about earlier because of the humility, because of the time you'll be spending, managing your mind and your emotions, and time in silence will develop that and cultivate that intuition and creativity and spontaneity and playfulness. In other words, we can become human beings again.
Yeah.
Why not?
No. Yeah, no, definitely, Mark. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. You can tell that you've been around the block, as coming from experience. So I appreciate your voice. Appreciate
you know what?
your time.
I look at business and entrepreneurship just as a vehicle, right? For living a good life, right? If it's your mission to build a business, it's not easy, right? If it was easy, everyone would do it. So I recognize it's not easy. Having a job is way easier than building and running a business, but you have the opportunity to really, really grow as a human being by being an entrepreneur. I think it's one of the best avenues for growth. So don't shy from the growth, especially us guys, the emotional development. That is where a lot of guys get stuck, right? Because they're really in their ego mind, and they want to think that they have to have all the answers, and they're perfectionists. You got to let that shit go. Yeah. The best leader these days is an exceptional teammate first. And that requires humility, right?
Yeah. No, so Mark, with the desire we have as human beings to provide a better life for loved ones, for our family, for our children. And like you mentioned, entrepreneurship is one of the greatest avenues or a medium to achieve that, right? But a lot of people find themselves stuck. Maybe they're stuck in a job or a business that turned out to seem like a job, and they thought it was going to give them freedom. And instead of freedom, they found themselves more frustrated when they even started with the idea of going into work for themselves. And like you mentioned, it's challenging, but the growth happens with that challenge. Like I believe challenges and challenging yourself is the boost that you need to achieve more, but we need to have the right mental state for sure. The inner world needs to be in alignment. But if someone out there is stuck and they want to build financial freedom for their family, can you share what would be the first thing they need to do to achieve it?
Oh, absolutely. Acknowledging that one's stuck, right? Let's just start there. The acknowledgement has already happened, because that's the first thing. Some people are stuck and they don't even take the time to realize they're stuck, and they get burnout, and they wonder why life is falling apart and they're getting sick. So acknowledging that you got a problem, and identifying what has gotten you stuck. So if it's the business, you got trapped in a business that's not thriving, or not thriving for you, or not meeting your needs. I've been there. So it's a painful place to be. But like you said, Shahid, pain is the crucible for transformation. So just to acknowledge that, don't resist it, let the feelings kind of flow, and carve out time to work the problem. What I mean by that, stop what you're doing for at least a half an hour every morning, right? Win in your mind before you step foot into that battle, so that you can make better decisions. And those decisions are going to be moving you away from what's getting you stuck and toward the life that you want. And so you spend that time in the morning, deep diaphragmatic nostril breathing, which resets your nervous system, gets you into a calm state. So now you can think more clearly. Contemplation and visualization. So what you do is you want to contemplate on your current situation and say, what's not working, right? Why do I feel the way I feel? What would my business look like if it was 100% aligned and operating to meet my needs, right? So many entrepreneurs, I build a business that met everyone else's needs but my own, right? And you can only sustain that for so long. So what would the business look like if it was set up to support my needs and my family's needs? And you'll start and just sit with questions like that. And there's plenty of other questions that you can ask that will really get you closer to your truth. And then what will happen is a new vision will emerge. I call it your future self. A new vision will emerge. And it's not something you construct. Like visualization has a constructive quality. We call that imagination. And then like active visualization, where you're like seeing something that you want to materialize or manifest. What I'm talking about is emergent imagery, which comes from your heart. So you begin to get a sense for a bigger way you can serve, more alignment in your life and what that would look like. And you can journal it, you can write it down. I have a vision statement. I read it every day, and I'm always making little tweaks because my sense of the future is evolves, right? Just like it does for everybody. And then you allow, when this vision for this new future, which can include a new entrepreneurial venture, or it could be a pivot or some sort of transformation of your current business like I'm doing, that vision, the emergent vision, is your future self vision. And now you take that and you turn it into active practice, where you practice that, because just like with sports visualization, if you can see it in your mind and believe it, and you practice it, then you're adding energy to that future potentiality until it becomes a certainty. And that point where it becomes certainty is probably the point where you'll be ready to take massive action toward that.
That's great, Mark. Thank you so much for sharing that. For me, I've seen a vision, and I know exactly what you mean. Imagination is on purpose, right? You're imagining, but these type of visions or these visuals that come up, the ones that came up a few times for me is an amusement park. Because I don't know
How
if
cool
I was
is that?
supposed to open up an amusement park, but this amusement park was indoors, going through rooms,
Cool.
and then I saw like large areas where kids were sitting and just being still, and I saw a waterfall and like a whole oasis that was around kids
That's
fun,
cool.
but it was felt
It
like
could be
more for
a
adults. I don't
future
know
of,
if that makes sense.
yeah, the future of education should be like that. Very
Oh,
organic, flowing, spontaneous play, creativity in this
yeah.
space, and playing in nature in that space, or sitting in silence in this space, and
Yeah.
letting the kids kind of naturally gravitate to what they're passionate about and what's
And let AI do the work.
yeah, let AI do all the rest of the work.
Yeah. Love it, Mark. Thank you so
Awesome.
much for giving your presence and sharing your presence and time with us.
Pleasure.
It's valuable. Hopefully, we added value to the people out there with this episode. Thank you so much, Mark. Audience, thank you. If you
Thank you.
would love, if you're watching this, if you could subscribe or engage or ask a question, or even if you don't agree, you could share anything. Is fine. Love to hear from you. Thank you so much. And again, thank you, Mark.
Hoo-yah. Thank you, Shahid.